Have you ever met someone for the very first time and felt as though you already knew them? Not in a casual way, not because they reminded you of someone else, but in a deeper way, a strange feeling that seemed to come from somewhere beyond memory, a feeling that whispered, "I have met this person before," or perhaps you have visited a place you had never seen in your life, yet everything felt familiar, the streets, the sounds, the atmosphere. It was as if some hidden part of you recognized it, even though your conscious mind did not. Maybe you have talents that appeared unusually early, a child who sits at a piano and somehow understands music, a young artist who seems born with skill, a person who feels naturally drawn toward a culture, language, or way of life they were never taught. Experiences like these have fascinated human beings for thousands of years. Across different cultures and different eras, people have wondered whether life begins only at birth and ends only at death. They have wondered whether consciousness continues its journey in ways that cannot easily be seen. Among the world's spiritual traditions, Buddhism offers one of the most thoughtful and nuanced perspectives on this mystery. The Buddha did not encourage blind belief. He invited people to observe their own experience carefully and honestly. He taught that life is part of a much larger process of cause and effect. According to Buddhist understanding, our actions, intentions, habits, and mental patterns do not simply disappear. They leave traces. They create conditions that continue beyond what we usually call a lifetime. Today, we will explore 7 signs that some Buddhist traditions associate with previous lives. These signs are not proof. Buddhism is generally cautious about making dramatic claims. Instead, these signs are viewed as invitations to reflect. They encourage us to look more deeply at ourselves and ask meaningful questions about who we are and why we are the way we are. Whether you believe in reincarnation completely, remain skeptical, or simply feel curious, the teachings we will explore have something valuable to offer, because ultimately, Buddhism is less concerned with proving where you came from and more concerned with helping you understand how to live wisely now. As we move through these signs, you may recognize some of them in your own life. You may discover connections you never noticed before, or perhaps you will simply gain a deeper appreciation for the mystery of human existence. So settle in comfortably. Allow yourself to listen with an open mind, and let us begin. The first sign is a deep and unexplainable sense of familiarity. Many people have experienced moments that seem impossible to explain. You walk into a place for the first time, yet something inside you says, "I know this." You meet a stranger, yet their presence feels strangely familiar. You hear a language you have never studied, yet it resonates with you in an unusual way. Modern psychology often explores these experiences through concepts like memory patterns, unconscious associations, and the brain's tendency to recognize similarities. Buddhism does not necessarily reject these explanations. But Buddhist traditions also leave room for another possibility. They suggest that consciousness carries impressions, not necessarily memories in the ordinary sense, not detailed recollections like scenes from a movie. Rather, subtle tendencies and impressions that continue from one life to another. Imagine carrying a candle flame from one candle to the next. The flame is not exactly the same flame, yet it is not completely different either. This image is often used to help explain rebirth in Buddhism. Something continues, not a permanent soul, not a fixed self, but a stream of causes and conditions, a continuity, a flow. In this understanding, familiarity may sometimes arise from deep impressions carried within that stream. There is an old Buddhist story about a monk who traveled through a distant region. When he arrived at a particular village, he felt an overwhelming sense of recognition. The roads felt familiar. The fields seemed known to him. Even the layout of the homes appeared strangely recognizable. He could not explain why. The experience stayed with him for years. Eventually, he stopped trying to solve the mystery. Instead, he used it as a reminder that life contains dimensions beyond immediate understanding. This response reflects an important Buddhist attitude. Rather than becoming obsessed with proving a previous life, the monk used the experience as an opportunity for humility. He accepted that not everything can be neatly explained. Many of us spend enormous amounts of energy demanding certainty from life. We want clear answers. We want complete explanations. We want every mystery solved. Yet the Buddha often pointed people toward a different relationship with uncertainty. He encouraged direct experience, careful observation, patience. Wisdom grows not only from answers, but also from our willingness to remain present with questions. Perhaps you have experienced moments of familiarity yourself. If so, Buddhism invites you to notice them without becoming attached to them. Observe them, reflect on them, but do not build your identity around them, because whether they come from a previous life or from processes we do not yet understand, they still point towards something meaningful. They remind us that reality may be larger than our ordinary assumptions. The second sign is an unusually strong connection with certain people. Have you ever met someone and felt an immediate bond? Not attraction alone, not simple friendliness, but a deep sense of recognition, a feeling that your lives were somehow connected long before your first conversation. Buddhist teachings often emphasize the power of karma. Karma is frequently misunderstood. It is not a system of rewards and punishments handed out by the universe. It is the natural principle that actions create consequences. Every intention leaves an imprint. Every choice influences future conditions. According to many Buddhist traditions, relationships can be shaped by karma accumulated across multiple lifetimes. This does not mean every important relationship comes from a previous life, but it does suggest that some connections may be rooted in deeper causes than we immediately see. Think about the people who have influenced your life most profoundly. Sometimes they appear unexpectedly: a teacher, a friend, a mentor, a partner, a stranger who says exactly what you need to hear at the exact moment you need to hear it. These encounters can feel almost destined. Buddhism approaches such experiences carefully. Rather than declaring them supernatural, it views them through the lens of interconnectedness. Nothing exists independently. Every event arises through countless causes and conditions. The people who enter your life are part of that vast network. There is a beautiful lesson hidden here. Whether someone knew you in a previous life is ultimately less important than how you treat them in this one. The Buddha repeatedly emphasized compassion, kindness, patience, and understanding. Because if relationships truly extend beyond a single lifetime, then every interaction matters deeply. And even if they do not, the same conclusion remains true. Every act of kindness shapes the future. Every act of compassion creates ripples. Every moment of understanding becomes part of the world we leave behind. This idea connects beautifully with one of the Buddha's most famous teachings. A man once approached the Buddha seeking answers about complex philosophical questions. He wanted certainty. He wanted definitive explanations about the nature of existence. The Buddha responded with a story. He described a man struck by a poisoned arrow. Imagine the wounded man refusing treatment until he learned who shot the arrow, what wood it was made from, where the shooter came from, and countless other details. The man would die before receiving the answers. The Buddha's point was simple. Some questions can become distractions from the immediate reality of life. Whether a particular relationship began in a previous life may be interesting, but the more important question is how you choose to show up in that relationship now. That is where transformation happens. That is where wisdom grows. And that is where the teachings of Buddhism always return us. Back to this moment, back to this choice, back to this life. As we continue exploring the signs associated with previous lives, keep this principle close. The purpose is not to escape the present. The purpose is to understand it more deeply, because every insight about the past is valuable only if it helps you live more wisely today. The third sign is the presence of powerful fears or emotional responses that seem to have no clear origin. Almost everyone has fears. Some fears are easy to understand. If you have been bitten by a dog, you may become nervous around dogs. If you have experienced a painful loss, you may fear being hurt again. The connection between the experience and the fear is visible, but sometimes people carry fears that seem to appear from nowhere. A person may feel intense anxiety around deep water, despite never having had a dangerous experience in water. Someone may experience overwhelming fear of heights, even though nothing traumatic ever happened to them at a great height. Another person may feel panic in enclosed spaces without understanding why. Modern psychology offers many possible explanations. Some fears may arise from early childhood experiences that have been forgotten consciously but remain active beneath awareness. Some may emerge from inherited tendencies or biological factors. Some may simply develop without a clear reason. Buddhism does not reject these possibilities. At the same time, certain Buddhist traditions suggest that some deeply rooted emotional tendencies may have origins extending beyond the present life. The key word here is tendencies. Buddhist teachings often focus on patterns rather than events. The Buddha repeatedly pointed to the way habits shape our experience. The mind learns. The mind repeats. The mind carries impressions forward. If consciousness continues through rebirth, then it is conceivable within Buddhist thought that strong emotional patterns might also continue, not as exact memories, not as detailed recollections, but as subtle tendencies that influence how we react to the world. Imagine planting a seed. The seed disappears beneath the soil. Months later, a tree begins to emerge. When you look at the tree, you no longer see the original seed, yet the tree still carries the influence of what came before. According to Buddhist teachings, karma often works in a similar way. Actions create impressions. Impressions create tendencies. Tendencies influence future experiences. Whether these processes unfold within a single lifetime or across many lifetimes, the principle remains the same. What we repeatedly cultivate becomes part of who we are. There is an important lesson here. Buddhism does not encourage people to become trapped by their fears. The purpose of examining them is not to say, "This is how I am, and I can never change." The purpose is the opposite. The Buddha taught that transformation is always possible. No matter how deeply rooted a pattern may be, awareness creates the possibility of freedom. Consider the famous parable of the second arrow. The Buddha explained that when painful experiences occur, we are struck by a first arrow. This first arrow represents the pain itself. Perhaps it is fear, perhaps it is sadness, perhaps it is disappointment, but then many people shoot themselves with a second arrow. The second arrow consists of resistance, judgment, and endless mental suffering. We become afraid of our fear. We become angry about our sadness. We become trapped in stories about why we feel the way we do. This second arrow often causes more suffering than the first. The teaching is profoundly simple. Pain may arise, fear may arise, emotions may arise, but we do not have to build our identity around them. We can observe them. We can learn from them. We can gradually loosen their hold over us. If you carry a fear that seems older than memory itself, Buddhism invites you to approach it with curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of asking, "What is wrong with me?" you might ask, "What is this fear trying to teach me?" That question opens a door. It transforms fear from an enemy into a teacher. And sometimes that shift changes everything. The fourth sign is an unusual talent or wisdom that appears surprisingly early in life. Throughout history, there have been children whose abilities seem extraordinary. A young musician who instinctively understands complex compositions. A child who paints with remarkable skill despite little training. Someone who displays unusual compassion, insight, or maturity far beyond their years. These examples often leave people wondering how such abilities develop. Of course, genetics, environment, education, and practice all play important roles. Buddhism acknowledges these factors. Yet, many Buddhist traditions also propose that talents may sometimes reflect qualities cultivated over previous lifetimes. To understand this idea, it helps to think about karma more deeply. Many people imagine karma as something dramatic. They think of major events and obvious consequences. But Buddhist teachings often describe karma as something far more subtle. Every action matters. Every thought matters. Every intention matters. Each one contributes to the formation of character. If a person spends years practicing kindness, kindness becomes more natural. If a person spends years developing patience, patience becomes easier. If a person spends years studying music, music becomes deeply ingrained. According to Buddhist thought, these cultivated tendencies may continue beyond a single lifetime. The specific memories disappear, but the momentum remains. A useful comparison is learning to ride a bicycle. At first, every movement requires concentration. Balancing feels difficult. Turning feels awkward. Stopping feels uncertain. Eventually, the skill becomes second nature. Years later, even after a long break, the body remembers, the conscious effort fades, but the training remains. Some Buddhist teachers suggest that spiritual and practical abilities may operate similarly across lifetimes. The details may disappear, the deeper tendencies endure. There is a story from Buddhist tradition about a young novice monk. From a very early age, he demonstrated remarkable patience and concentration. While other children became distracted, he could sit quietly for long periods. While others argued, he responded with gentleness. Older monks were surprised. One day, a teacher explained that such qualities rarely appear suddenly. They are usually the result of long cultivation. Whether that cultivation occurred in previous lives or within conditions hidden from view, the lesson remained the same. Virtue grows through practice. Wisdom grows through practice. Compassion grows through practice. Nothing valuable appears by accident. This teaching offers an encouraging perspective. Many people compare themselves to others. They see someone else's talent and assume they could never achieve the same level. They see someone else's wisdom and believe they are somehow deficient. The Buddha's teachings point in a different direction. They remind us that every ability develops through causes and conditions. Every expert was once a beginner. Every wise person was once confused. Every compassionate person once struggled with anger. Growth is possible because everything is shaped by causes and conditions. If talent can be cultivated, then transformation can also be cultivated. This principle applies far beyond music, art, or intellectual ability. Consider kindness. Some people seem naturally compassionate. They instinctively understand how to comfort others. They listen carefully. They respond gently. According to Buddhist thinking, this may reflect a quality developed over a very long period of time, not because they are special, not because they are superior, but because compassion, like any skill, becomes stronger through repetition. The same is true for generosity. The same is true for patience. The same is true for wisdom. Every moment becomes a form of training. Every choice becomes a seed. Every action becomes part of the person you are becoming. This understanding transforms the way we view our daily lives. Even small actions matter. The smile you offer a stranger matters. The patience you show during a difficult conversation matters. The kindness you extend when nobody is watching matters. From a Buddhist perspective, nothing is ever wasted. Every wholesome action leaves an imprint. Every compassionate choice strengthens the habit of compassion. Every moment of awareness strengthens the habit of awareness. Whether those qualities continue into future lives or simply shape the remainder of this one, the principle remains powerful. You are always becoming. You are never fixed. You are never finished. This is one of the most hopeful aspects of Buddhist teaching. It reminds us that who we are today is not the end of the story. The future is constantly being shaped by the choices we make right now. And that means transformation is always possible. Perhaps you possess a talent that feels strangely natural. Perhaps there is a skill, a wisdom, or a way of seeing the world that seems older than your years. Buddhism would not ask you to prove where it came from. Instead, it would encourage gratitude. Use it well, develop it further, share it with others. Because whatever its origin may be, its greatest value lies in how it benefits the world today. As we continue exploring these signs, we begin to see a recurring theme. The Buddha's teachings are rarely focused on satisfying curiosity alone. Again and again, they point us toward responsibility, toward growth, toward awareness, toward compassion. The question is not merely whether you have lived before. The deeper question is this: how are you living now? Because this moment is where karma is created. This moment is where habits are formed. This moment is where the future begins. The fifth sign is a powerful attraction to certain places, cultures, or periods of history that seems impossible to explain. Have you ever felt drawn toward a particular part of the world, even though you have never been there? Perhaps photographs of a distant country stir something deep inside you. Perhaps certain landscapes feel familiar in ways that make no logical sense. Maybe there is a culture, a language, or a historical era that captures your attention so completely that it feels less like interest and more like remembrance. Many people experience this. Some feel an immediate connection to mountains. Others feel at home near the ocean. Some are fascinated by ancient temples, forgotten civilizations, or distant lands they have never visited. Of course, there can be many explanations. Personality, upbringing, books, films, and countless other influences shape our interests. Buddhism acknowledges these factors. Yet some Buddhist traditions suggest that deep attractions may occasionally reflect karmic connections carried from previous lives. Again, it is important to understand what this means. The idea is not that a person suddenly remembers an entire previous existence. Buddhist teachings generally do not describe rebirth that way. Instead, they describe subtle impressions, patterns, inclinations, tendencies that continue through the stream of consciousness. Imagine walking through a forest. Each step leaves a faint mark on the path. Over time, a trail begins to form. The individual footprints disappear, yet the path remains. According to Buddhist thought, our experiences leave similar traces. We may not remember the individual moments, but their influence can remain. There is a story often told in Buddhist circles about a traveler who spent years feeling an unexplained longing for a particular region of the world. He could not explain it. He had no family there, no personal connection, no practical reason for his fascination. Eventually, he visited. The moment he arrived, he felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The landscape felt familiar. The people felt familiar. Even the ordinary sounds of daily life seemed strangely comforting. Now, Buddhism would not rush to conclude that he had lived there in a previous life. That would be speculation. What matters is the lesson the experience revealed. Sometimes we are drawn toward places that help us understand ourselves. Sometimes a location awakens qualities that have been dormant. Sometimes a journey outward becomes a journey inward. The Buddha himself spent much of his life walking. He moved from village to village, forest to forest, city to city. His teachings remind us that wisdom is not confined to one location, yet environments influence us. Certain places encourage reflection. Certain places encourage restlessness. Certain places help us see more clearly. Perhaps the deeper significance of these attractions is not where they come from, but what they reveal. What qualities awaken within you when you encounter them? What parts of yourself come alive? What lessons emerge? If a place calls to you, listen carefully, not because it necessarily holds secrets from a previous life, but because it may hold lessons for this one. There is another dimension to this sign. Sometimes the attraction is not geographical. Sometimes it is historical. A person may feel fascinated by a particular era: ancient China, medieval Japan, classical India, ancient Greece, or another chapter of human history. They study it endlessly. They feel emotionally connected to it. The stories resonate deeply. The values speak to them. Again, Buddhism would encourage curiosity without attachment. The attraction itself is not the destination. It is a doorway, a clue, an invitation to explore what qualities are calling to you. Perhaps courage, perhaps discipline, perhaps wisdom, perhaps beauty. Whatever draws your attention may also be pointing towards something within yourself that seeks expression. The sixth sign is a natural understanding of spiritual truths that seems to arise without formal teaching. This sign is perhaps one of the most fascinating. Some people encounter spiritual teachings and feel as though they are hearing something they have always known. The words are new, the concepts are new, yet the truth behind them feels familiar. A person may read a Buddhist teaching for the first time and feel an immediate recognition, not because they fully understand it intellectually, but because something deeper resonates. The teaching feels less like learning and more like remembering. Buddhist traditions sometimes view this as a sign of previous spiritual cultivation. The idea is not that knowledge transfers directly from one life to another. Rather, the mind may carry tendencies developed through long practice. Imagine a musician who spends years training. If they stop playing for a long time, some skills may fade. Yet when they return to music, progress often comes quickly. The foundation remains. Similarly, Buddhist teachings suggest that qualities developed through meditation, ethical living, and wisdom may leave lasting impressions. A person who has cultivated these qualities extensively may feel naturally drawn toward them again. There is a beautiful story involving a monk who became known for his extraordinary insight. People often asked him how he learnt so quickly, how he understood teachings that others struggled to grasp. The monk responded with humility. He explained that wisdom does not appear suddenly. Like a tree, it grows slowly, season after season, year after year, life after life. According to traditional Buddhist understanding, the important lesson here is not about proving previous lives. The important lesson is about respecting gradual growth. We live in a culture that often celebrates immediate results. Instant success, instant mastery, instant transformation. But Buddhism teaches patience. A seed does not become a tree overnight. A river does not carve a canyon in a day. Wisdom develops through steady practice. Compassion develops through steady practice. Inner peace develops through steady practice. This teaching can be deeply reassuring. Many people become discouraged because they do not see immediate progress. They begin meditating and expect instant calm, They practice kindness and expect immediate transformation. They seek wisdom and expect quick answers. When those expectations are not met, they lose heart. The Buddha encouraged a different perspective. He taught that every wholesome effort matters. Every moment of mindfulness matters. Every act of compassion matters, even when results are not immediately visible. Imagine planting a garden. For days, nothing appears above the surface. The soil looks unchanged, yet beneath the ground, growth is already occurring. Roots are forming, life is developing. Something important is happening even though it cannot yet be seen. Spiritual growth often unfolds the same way. The most significant changes are frequently invisible at first. Patience becomes essential. Trust becomes essential. Faith, not in the sense of blind belief, but in the sense of trusting the process. There is a famous Buddhist parable known as the raft. A traveler comes to a dangerous river. The water is deep, the current is strong. The opposite shore represents freedom and safety. Unable to cross, the traveler builds a raft. Using effort, patience, and determination, he reaches the far shore. The Buddha then asks an important question. Should the traveler carry the raft on his back forever? Of course not. The raft served its purpose. It helped him cross. Now it can be left behind. The lesson is profound. Teachings are tools. Practices are tools. Even beliefs are tools. Their purpose is not to become objects of attachment. Their purpose is to help us awaken. This applies equally to ideas about previous lives. If belief in rebirth inspires greater compassion, greater responsibility, and greater wisdom, it may be useful. If it becomes a source of pride, fear, or obsession, it loses its value. The Buddha consistently directed attention toward liberation from suffering. That was always the central goal, not collecting spiritual theories, not proving metaphysical claims, not satisfying curiosity for its own sake. Freedom, awareness, compassion, wisdom, these were the priorities. As we explore signs associated with previous lives, it is important not to lose sight of this. The teachings are meaningful only if they help us become more awake, more kind, more present, more compassionate. There is another aspect of spiritual recognition worth considering. Sometimes people encounter a teaching and immediately resist it, not because it is false, but because it challenges deeply held assumptions. Other times, a teaching lands gently. It feels natural, almost obvious. This recognition can occur with ideas such as impermanence, the understanding that everything changes, or interconnection, the understanding that all beings influence one another, or compassion, the understanding that caring for others ultimately benefits ourselves as well. Many people hear these teachings and feel an immediate resonance. They do not need extensive arguments. Something within them recognizes the truth. Whether this recognition originates from previous lives, personal experience, or simple intuition is impossible to know with certainty. What matters is how the recognition influences life. Does it make you kinder? Does it make you wiser? Does it make you more patient? Does it reduce suffering? These are the questions Buddhism encourages us to ask. Because genuine spiritual understanding is not measured by what you believe. It is measured by how you live. A person may speak eloquently about reincarnation while treating others poorly. Another person may have no opinion about previous lives at all, yet live with extraordinary compassion. From a Buddhist perspective, the second person is much closer to wisdom. The true measure of understanding is conduct, not theory, not speculation, not philosophy alone. How do you respond when someone hurts you? How do you behave when nobody is watching? How do you treat those who can offer you nothing in return? These questions reveal the depth of your practice far more than any belief ever could. And perhaps this is why the Buddha consistently returned attention to the present moment. Because regardless of how many lives may have come before, this life is the one currently in your hands. This breath, this choice, this opportunity, right here, right now, that is where awakening begins. The seventh sign is a deep feeling that life has a purpose larger than personal success, comfort, or achievement. At first, this may not seem like a sign connected to previous lives. Many people assume that signs of reincarnation must involve unusual memories, mysterious experiences, or dramatic stories. Yet, some Buddhist teachers have suggested that one of the most meaningful indications of long spiritual development is not a supernatural experience at all. It is a profound inner longing for truth, a longing that cannot be satisfied by wealth alone, a longing that cannot be satisfied by status alone, a longing that cannot be satisfied by praise, possessions, or accomplishments. You may have felt this yourself. Perhaps there was a time when you achieved something you once desperately wanted. You reached a goal, you earned recognition, you acquired something valuable, and for a brief moment you felt happy. But soon afterward another feeling appeared. A quiet question, is this all? That question has echoed through human history. Kings have asked it, merchants have asked it, artists have asked it, farmers have asked it. Ordinary people and extraordinary people alike have felt it. The Buddha himself began his spiritual journey because of this question. Before his awakening, he lived a life of great privilege. According to Buddhist tradition, he had access to luxury, comfort, and opportunity. Yet despite having everything many people desire, he recognized something troubling. No amount of comfort could protect a person from aging. No amount of wealth could prevent sickness. No amount of status could stop death. He saw that every human being was vulnerable to suffering, and he became determined to understand whether freedom from suffering was possible. That determination changed the course of history. What is fascinating is that Buddhist traditions often describe this kind of spiritual longing as the result of many lifetimes of development, not because certain people are special, not because they are chosen, but because wisdom tends to grow gradually. Just as a tree develops ring by ring, wisdom develops experience by experience, life after life, according to traditional teachings. Whether one accepts rebirth literally or views it symbolically, the message remains powerful. The desire for truth often grows slowly. The desire to understand reality deeply often emerges after many encounters with disappointment, pleasure, success, failure, joy, and loss. Eventually, a person begins seeking something more lasting, something more fundamental, something that cannot be taken away by changing circumstances. This search lies at the heart of Buddhism, and when it appears strongly in a person's life, some traditions view it as evidence of a long spiritual journey. There is an old image used in Buddhist teachings. Imagine a traveler wandering through a vast desert. For years, he chases mirages. Each one appears promising. Each one seems to offer satisfaction. Yet every time he arrives, he discovers that the promise was an illusion. Eventually, he stops chasing appearances. Instead, he begins searching for real water. This shift changes everything. Many of us spend years pursuing mirages. We chase approval, we chase comparison, we chase the idea that happiness exists somewhere in the future. If I can just achieve this one thing, then I will finally be content. If I can just acquire this one thing, then I will finally be at peace. But the finish line keeps moving. The desire simply changes form. The Buddha recognized this pattern with extraordinary clarity. He observed that much of human suffering arises from endless grasping, not because desires are evil, not because goals are wrong, But because we mistakenly expect impermanent things to provide permanent satisfaction, when they inevitably change, disappointment follows. This realization is one of the reasons Buddhist teachings resonate so deeply with many people. Even without studying Buddhism, people often sense this truth. They see it in their own lives. They notice that every achievement eventually becomes normal. Every possession loses some of its novelty. Every circumstance changes. And so the search begins. A search not for more things, but for deeper understanding. If you have experienced this longing, Buddhism invites you to honor it, not as a problem, not as dissatisfaction, but as the beginning of wisdom, because the recognition that ordinary pleasures cannot provide lasting fulfillment is often the first step toward genuine awakening. This brings us to one of the most moving stories in all of Buddhist literature, the story of Kisa Gotami and the mustard seed. Kisa Gotami was a young mother whose beloved child died. Overwhelmed by grief, she could not accept what had happened. She carried her child's body from house to house, begging for medicine. She believed someone, somewhere, would be able to save him. People pitied her. Some tried to comfort her. Others avoided her. Eventually, someone suggested that she visit the Buddha. Desperate and heartbroken, she went to him. The Buddha listened to her suffering with compassion. Then, he told her he could help. But first, she needed to bring him a mustard seed. Relieved, she eagerly agreed. However, there was one condition. The mustard seed had to come from a household that had never experienced death. Kisa Gotami immediately began searching. She went from house to house. At every home, people were willing to offer mustard seeds. Mustard seeds were common. They were easy to find. But when she asked whether the family had ever experienced death, the answer was always the same. A father had died. A mother had died. A sister had died. A husband had died. A child had died. Again and again, she heard stories of loss. Gradually, something began to change. She realized that her suffering was not hers alone. Every household carried grief. Every family knew loss. Every person lived under the shadow of impermanence. By the time she returned to the Buddha, she carried no mustard seed. But she carried something else. Understanding. Her grief had not vanished. Her love for her child remained. Yet she now saw her suffering within the larger reality of human existence. The Buddha helped her understand what all living beings must eventually face. Everything changes. Everything passes. Everything that is born eventually dies. This story is deeply connected to the question of previous lives. Because Buddhism teaches that understanding impermanence is more important than uncovering past identities. Imagine discovering exactly who you were in a previous life. Imagine learning every detail. What would happen then? Eventually, even that knowledge would become another memory, another story, another thing to cling to. The Buddha consistently directed attention beyond stories, beyond identities, beyond labels, toward direct understanding of reality itself. This is one reason Buddhist teachings about reincarnation differ from many popular interpretations. The emphasis is rarely on discovering who you used to be. The emphasis is on understanding the forces that shape suffering and freedom. The emphasis is on awakening. Throughout history, countless people have become fascinated by the possibility of previous lives. Some have sought memories. Some have sought proof. Some have searched for hidden identities. Yet the Buddha often redirected such curiosity toward a more practical question. What are you doing with this life? Because regardless of how many lives may have come before, this one is unfolding now. This moment is where choices are made. This moment is where kindness is practiced. This moment is where wisdom develops. This moment is where karma is created. there is a subtle but important shift here. Instead of asking, "Who was I before?" the teachings encourage us to ask, "Who am I becoming?" That question changes everything. The past may influence us, but it does not imprison us. According to Buddhism, every moment contains the possibility of transformation. A person who has spent years acting selfishly can learn generosity. A person consumed by anger can learn compassion. A person trapped in fear can discover courage. A person lost in confusion can develop wisdom. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is permanent. Everything is capable of change. This principle applies whether one believes in rebirth or not. And perhaps that is one reason Buddhism continues to resonate across cultures and centuries. Its deepest teachings remain relevant regardless of one's metaphysical beliefs. You do not need certainty about previous lives to practice compassion. You do not need proof of reincarnation to cultivate patience. You do not need memories of past existences to develop wisdom. These qualities are available here and now. In fact, from a Buddhist perspective, the present moment is always where the real work happens. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, not some imagined previous lifetime. This breath, this choice, this conversation, this opportunity, that is where transformation lives. As we reflect on the 7 signs we have explored, a larger picture begins to emerge. Perhaps you have experienced unusual familiarity. Perhaps certain relationships have felt older than memory. Perhaps you carry fears without obvious causes. Perhaps talents seem to arise naturally. Perhaps particular places call to you. Perhaps spiritual teachings resonate deeply. Perhaps you feel an undeniable longing for truth. Buddhist traditions sometimes view these experiences as possible echoes of previous lives, but they also offer an important caution. Do not become attached to the signs. Do not build your identity around them. Do not mistake the finger pointing at the moon for the moon itself. The signs are not the destination. They are invitations. Invitations to look more deeply. Invitations to live more consciously. Invitations to understand yourself with greater honesty and compassion. And perhaps that is their greatest value. Not that they prove anything, but that they encourage reflection. Because when you begin reflecting deeply, something remarkable happens. You become less concerned with certainty and more concerned with wisdom. Less concerned with answers and more concerned with understanding. Less concerned with who you once were and more concerned with how you are living now. That shift marks the beginning of genuine spiritual maturity. It is the movement from curiosity toward insight, from fascination toward transformation, from speculation toward practice. And according to Buddhism, practice is where freedom is found. As we begin to bring these teachings together, it is worth pausing to consider something remarkable. For thousands of years, human beings have looked up at the stars and wondered where they came from. They have stood beside rivers and wondered where they were going. They have watched loved ones arrive in this world and eventually leave it, and they have asked the same question generation after generation. Is this life the entire story, or is it one chapter in something much larger? The Buddha lived in a time when many people debated these questions passionately. Some insisted they knew the answers. Others rejected all discussion entirely. Yet, what makes the Buddha's approach unique is that he continually guided people away from endless speculation and back toward direct experience. Imagine 2 people standing at the edge of a vast ocean. One spends years arguing about its depth. The other begins learning how to navigate its waters. Which person truly understands the ocean? The Buddha's teachings encourage us to become the second person, not because questions are unimportant. Questions matter, curiosity matters, wonder matters, but wisdom emerges through experience, observation, and practice, not merely through theory. This perspective changes the way we think about reincarnation. Many people approach the topic hoping for certainty. They want proof. They want evidence that removes all doubt. Yet Buddhism often invites a different relationship with uncertainty. Instead of demanding immediate answers, it encourages careful investigation. Observe your mind. Observe your habits. Observe the consequences of your actions. Observe the causes of suffering and the causes of peace. In doing so, you begin discovering truths that matter regardless of what conclusions you reach about previous lives. You discover that anger creates suffering. You discover that compassion creates connection. You discover that greed creates restlessness. You discover that gratitude creates contentment. You discover that clinging creates tension. You discover that acceptance creates freedom. These observations are available to anyone. They do not require belief. They require attention. And perhaps that is one reason Buddhist teachings have endured for so long. They are grounded in experience. They invite verification through living rather than blind acceptance. There is another story that beautifully illustrates this principle. One day, a group of villagers approached the Buddha. They were confused because many teachers had visited their town. Each teacher claimed to possess the truth. Each teacher criticized the others. The villagers no longer knew whom to believe. The Buddha responded with advice that remains astonishingly relevant today. He did not tell them to believe him simply because he was respected. He did not ask them to accept teachings based on tradition alone. Instead, he encouraged them to investigate carefully, to observe, to reflect, to see for themselves what leads to harm and what leads to well-being. In essence, he encouraged wisdom over blind belief. This attitude is especially important when discussing reincarnation. Whether one accepts rebirth literally, symbolically, or remains uncertain, the invitation is the same. Investigate your own experience. Notice what creates suffering. Notice what reduces suffering. Notice what brings clarity. Notice what brings confusion. These observations become the foundation of genuine understanding, because ultimately, the purpose of Buddhist teachings is not to satisfy intellectual curiosity. Their purpose is liberation, freedom from unnecessary suffering, freedom from destructive habits, freedom from the endless cycle of grasping and resistance that keeps the mind restless. And this brings us to one of the most profound insights in Buddhism: the understanding of impermanence. Everything changes. The seasons change. The weather changes. The body changes. Relationships change. Thoughts change. Emotions change. Entire civilizations rise and fall. Nothing remains exactly as it is. At first, this truth can seem unsettling. Human beings naturally seek stability. We want things to stay the same. We want pleasant experiences to last forever. We want painful experiences to disappear immediately. Yet reality does not operate according to those preferences. Everything moves, everything flows, everything transforms. The Buddha taught that much suffering arises when we resist this fact. We cling to what is changing. We demand permanence from what is inherently temporary, and then we wonder why we feel disappointed. Imagine holding a handful of sand. If you grasp it tightly, much of it slips through your fingers. If you hold it gently, it remains longer. The same principle applies to life. The more desperately we cling, the more suffering we create. The more skillfully we relate to change, the more peace becomes possible. This insight becomes especially meaningful when considering previous lives. If rebirth exists, then change continues beyond death. If rebirth does not exist, change still remains the fundamental nature of existence. Either way, the lesson is remarkably similar. Learn to move with reality rather than against it. Learn to appreciate what is present while it is present. Learn to love without trying to possess. Learn to care without clinging. Learn to live fully while accepting uncertainty. These lessons matter regardless of what happens after death. And perhaps that is why they remain so powerful. Many people spend enormous energy worrying about the future. What will happen tomorrow? What will happen next year? What will happen after death? These questions are understandable. They arise naturally, but sometimes they pull attention away from the only moment where life is actually happening, the present. There is a Zen story, rooted in the broader Buddhist tradition, about a student who asked his teacher how to attain enlightenment. The teacher replied, "When hungry, eat. When tired, sleep." The student felt disappointed. The answer seemed too simple, so he asked what made an enlightened person different from everyone else. The teacher smiled. "When hungry, they eat. When tired, they sleep." The student remained confused. The teacher continued, "Most people are never fully where they are. When eating, they think about other things. When resting, they worry about tomorrow. Their minds are everywhere except the present." This simple story contains immense wisdom. Many of us spend our lives mentally traveling through time. We revisit the past. We anticipate the future. Meanwhile, the present moment passes unnoticed. The Buddha repeatedly emphasized returning attention to what is here. Not because the past is irrelevant, not because the future is unimportant, but because this moment is where life unfolds. This moment is where awareness exists. This moment is where transformation becomes possible. If you truly wish to honor the mystery of existence, start here. Pay attention to the life directly in front of you. Listen deeply when someone speaks. Notice the sensation of breathing. Observe your thoughts without immediately believing them. Treat people with kindness. Practice patience. Cultivate gratitude. These simple actions may seem unrelated to grand questions about reincarnation. Yet, from a Buddhist perspective, they are profoundly connected because every moment of awareness shapes the future. Every act of compassion shapes the future. Every wholesome intention shapes the future. Whether that future unfolds tomorrow, years from now, or in another lifetime, according to traditional belief, the principle remains the same. The seeds you plant today become the conditions you encounter later. Imagine standing in a garden. Every thought is a seed. Every action is a seed. Every habit is a seed. Some seeds produce suffering. Others produce peace. Some create confusion. Others create wisdom. The garden you experience tomorrow depends largely on what you cultivate today. This understanding transforms the concept of karma from something mysterious into something deeply practical. Karma is not fate. It is not destiny carved in stone. It is participation. It is the recognition that our choices matter, that our actions matter, that our intentions matter. This is empowering because it means the future is not fixed. No matter what happened yesterday, new choices remain possible today. No matter how many mistakes have been made, growth remains possible. No matter how lost someone feels, a different direction remains available. The Buddha's teachings are filled with examples of transformation. People consumed by anger learned compassion. People trapped by greed learned generosity. People overwhelmed by fear discovered courage. Again and again, the message remained consistent. Change is possible. Awakening is possible. Freedom is possible. And perhaps this is the most important takeaway from everything we have explored. The question is not merely whether you have lived before. The question is what kind of life you are creating now. Because every moment becomes part of your path. Every choice contributes to your direction. Every act of awareness strengthens awareness. Every act of kindness strengthens kindness. Every act of wisdom strengthens wisdom. You may never know with certainty whether some of the experiences we discussed truly originate from previous lives. You may never discover why certain people feel familiar. You may never fully understand why particular places call to you. You may never know why some fears seem older than memory, and that is perfectly all right. Life does not require complete certainty to be meaningful. In many ways, mystery is part of its beauty. A night sky would lose some of its wonder if every star revealed all its secrets. A great ocean would lose some of its majesty if every depth were instantly known. Human existence carries mystery as well. And perhaps wisdom lies not in eliminating mystery, but in learning how to live gracefully within it. The Buddha did not offer certainty about every question. What he offered was a path, a way of living, a way of relating to suffering, a way of cultivating peace, a way of developing compassion and wisdom. That path remains available today. It remains available in this moment, not somewhere far away, not after years of searching, right here. With the next breath, with the next choice, with the next opportunity to act with kindness, that is where the journey begins, and that is where it continues. And now, as our journey together begins to draw toward its conclusion, it may be helpful to return to the question that brought us here. Have you lived before? Perhaps, perhaps not. From the perspective of Buddhist tradition, rebirth is a central teaching. For more than 2,000 years, Buddhist practitioners have reflected upon the continuity of consciousness, the unfolding of karma, and the possibility that life extends beyond a single human lifetime. Yet, something remarkable happens when we examine the Buddha's teachings closely. Again and again, we discover that he was less interested in satisfying curiosity about the past than in transforming the present. Imagine spending your entire life studying maps. You learn every road, every mountain range, every river, every path. You become an expert on geography, but you never actually travel. Meanwhile, another person knows very little about maps, yet each day they take a step forward. Each day they walk. Each day they learn directly from experience. Who truly understands the journey? This comparison reflects an important distinction. Knowledge has value, ideas have value, questions have value, but transformation comes through practice. The Buddha's teachings consistently point toward this truth. You can spend years debating reincarnation. You can spend years discussing philosophy. You can spend years exploring theories about existence. Yet if anger continues to rule your life, suffering remains. If greed continues to dominate your decisions, suffering remains. If fear continues to control your choices, suffering remains. Freedom begins when understanding becomes lived experience. This is why meditation occupies such an important place within Buddhism. Many people assume meditation exists primarily to create relaxation. Relaxation may occur, but that is not its deepest purpose. Meditation trains awareness. It teaches you to observe the mind, to notice thoughts arising and passing, to notice emotions arising and passing, to notice desires arising and passing. Through this observation, a profound realization gradually develops. Everything changes, even the things that seem most solid, even the thoughts that feel most convincing, even the emotions that feel overwhelming. Everything moves, everything shifts, everything passes. This realization can be deeply liberating. Consider how often people become trapped by temporary experiences. A painful emotion appears, and they assume it will last forever. A difficult situation arises, and they assume life will never improve. A mistake occurs, and they assume it defines them permanently. Yet experience repeatedly demonstrates otherwise. Emotions change, circumstances change, people change, life changes. The Buddha encouraged people to see this directly, not merely as an idea, as a lived reality. Because when you truly understand impermanence, something inside you begins to soften. You stop clinging quite so tightly. You stop resisting quite so fiercely. You begin trusting the natural movement of life. This understanding also changes how we view ourselves. Many people carry heavy burdens from the past. Regret, guilt, shame, old mistakes, old failures, old wounds. Sometimes these burdens become part of their identity. They stop seeing them as experiences and start seeing them as who they are. But Buddhism offers a radically hopeful perspective. You are not fixed. You are not frozen. You are not trapped inside a permanent version of yourself. The person you were 5 years ago is not the person you are today. The person you are today is not the person you will be 5 years from now. Change is always occurring. Growth is always possible. This is true whether we are discussing one lifetime or many. The principle remains the same. Transformation is available. At every moment, there is a beautiful image sometimes used by Buddhist teachers. Imagine a muddy pond. If the water is constantly stirred, it remains cloudy. You cannot see clearly. But if the water becomes still, the mud gradually settles. The clarity was always there. It was simply obscured. The same is true of the mind. Many people believe peace must be created. The Buddha suggested something slightly different. Peace often emerges when unnecessary agitation begins to settle. Wisdom emerges when confusion begins to settle. Compassion emerges when fear begins to settle. The qualities we seek may already exist within us. They simply require space to reveal themselves. This understanding becomes especially meaningful when considering the 7 signs we have explored. Perhaps some of those signs resonated strongly with you. Perhaps others did not. Perhaps you recognized several experiences from your own life, or perhaps you remain uncertain. Both responses are perfectly valid. The purpose was never to convince you of anything. The purpose was to invite reflection, because reflection creates space. And within that space, deeper understanding can emerge. Maybe you have always felt connected to certain people. Maybe particular places seem strangely familiar. Maybe spiritual teachings resonate in ways that are difficult to explain. Maybe you possess talents that feel older than your years. Or maybe none of these experiences have occurred. What matters most is not the signs themselves. What matters is what they inspire within you. Do they encourage curiosity? Do they encourage humility? Do they encourage compassion? Do they encourage a deeper appreciation for life? If so, they have served a valuable purpose. One of the most beautiful aspects of Buddhism is its emphasis on interconnectedness. Nothing exists completely independently. Every life influences other lives. Every action creates consequences. Every kindness creates ripples. Every cruelty creates ripples as well. Imagine dropping a small stone into a still lake. The impact appears tiny, yet circles spread outward across the water. The same thing happens with every choice we make. A kind word may seem insignificant, yet it can alter someone's entire day. That person's improved mood may affect their family. Their family may affect others. The ripple continues. Most of the consequences of our actions remain invisible. We never see how far they travel, but that does not mean they do not exist. This understanding encourages responsibility, not responsibility rooted in fear, responsibility rooted in awareness. The recognition that our lives matter, that our choices matter, that the way we treat others matters. This lesson becomes even more meaningful when viewed through the lens of rebirth. If consciousness continues beyond death, then every moment becomes part of a much larger journey. Every act of kindness becomes an investment in future well-being. Every moment of wisdom strengthens wisdom itself. Every compassionate action contributes to the unfolding of compassion. But even for those who remain uncertain about rebirth, the same principle holds true. The future is shaped by the present. Tomorrow is shaped by today. The world we leave behind is shaped by how we live now. In this sense, everyone participates in creating the future. Everyone contributes to the conditions that others will inherit. This realization invites a profound question. What kind of legacy are you creating? Not merely through achievements, not merely through possessions, not merely through accomplishments, but through your presence, through your character, through the way you move through the world. When people encounter you, do they leave feeling seen? Do they leave feeling understood? Do they leave feeling encouraged? Do they leave feeling valued? These questions reveal something deeper than success. They reveal the quality of a life. And from a Buddhist perspective, the quality of a life matters far more than its external appearance. A person may accumulate wealth, yet remain restless. A person may achieve fame, yet remain dissatisfied. A person may gain power, yet remain fearful. Meanwhile, another person may live quietly and simply while radiating peace. The difference lies not in circumstances. The difference lies in relationship. How do we relate to life? How do we relate to change? How do we relate to ourselves and others? These questions stand at the heart of Buddhist practice. As our exploration comes to an end, consider carrying one simple reflection with you. Imagine that every person you meet is fighting a battle you cannot see. Every stranger carries hopes, fears, memories, and struggles. Every person experiences joy and loss. Every person seeks happiness. Every person wishes to avoid suffering. This recognition naturally gives rise to compassion. And compassion, according to Buddhism, is one of the most transformative forces in existence, not because it changes the world overnight, but because it changes the way we participate in the world. A compassionate mind sees differently, speaks differently, acts differently, lives differently. And perhaps that is the deepest lesson hidden within discussions of reincarnation. Whether you have lived one life or many, compassion remains the path. Whether consciousness continues after death or not, compassion remains the path. Whether every mystery is solved or remains unsolved, compassion remains the path. Because compassion transforms the present moment, and the present moment is where life actually happens. So the next time you experience an unexplained sense of familiarity, pause and observe. The next time a place feels strangely like home, pause and observe. The next time a spiritual teaching resonates deeply, pause and observe. The next time you wonder who you may have been before, gently return to an even more important question. Who are you becoming now? That question contains extraordinary power. Because unlike the past, the answer is still being written. It is being written through your choices, through your actions, through your habits, through your intentions, moment by moment, day by day, breath by breath. And perhaps that is where the Buddha ultimately wanted our attention to rest, not on identities, not on labels, not on stories, but on awareness, on compassion, on wisdom, on the possibility of awakening. Right here, right now, in this very life. Thank you for sharing this reflection. May you move through life with curiosity instead of fear. May you meet uncertainty with openness instead of resistance. May you cultivate wisdom with patience. May you cultivate compassion with courage. And may you remember that regardless of how many lives have come before, this moment is precious. This breath is precious. This opportunity to awaken is precious. Treat it with care and let it guide you toward a life of greater understanding, greater kindness, and greater peace. For in the end, whether the journey spans one lifetime or many, the path is always walked in the same way, one mindful step at a time. And before we part, there is one final reflection worth carrying with you. Imagine that, At the end of your life, you are given the answer to every question that has ever troubled you. You learn whether reincarnation is real. You learn where consciousness comes from. You learn what happens after death. You learn the hidden causes behind every mystery you have ever wondered about. For a moment, imagine possessing complete certainty. Now ask yourself something deeper. Would that knowledge alone make you wise? Would it automatically make you compassionate? Would it automatically heal your regrets, soften your anger, or open your heart? Probably not. Knowledge can illuminate the path, but it cannot walk the path for us. That is why the Buddha placed such importance on how we live rather than what we merely believe. A person can spend a lifetime searching for extraordinary answers while overlooking the extraordinary opportunities that appear every ordinary day. The opportunity to be patient when impatience would be easier. The opportunity to forgive when resentment feels justified. The opportunity to listen when speaking would be more comfortable. The opportunity to show kindness when no reward is guaranteed. These moments may seem small, but according to Buddhist teachings, entire destinies are shaped by such moments. A forest begins with seeds. A river begins with drops of rain. A life of wisdom begins with small acts of awareness, repeated consistently over time. Perhaps that is the true secret hidden within the idea of rebirth. Not simply that life may continue, but that every moment matters. Every thought matters. Every intention matters. Every action matters. Whether their effects unfold tomorrow, years from now, or across lifetimes, according to traditional belief, nothing exists in isolation. Everything participates in the unfolding story. And so, if there is one lesson to take from this exploration, let it be this. Do not become overly concerned with who you may have been. Do not become trapped trying to uncover every mystery of the past. Instead, give your attention to the person you are becoming, because that is where your power lives. That is where transformation happens. That is where karma is created. That is where wisdom grows. And that is where freedom begins. If you have lived before, then let the lessons of those lives express themselves through greater compassion today. If you have not lived before, then this life becomes even more precious, and compassion remains just as important. Either way, the conclusion is remarkably similar. Live carefully, live consciously, live kindly, not because someone is watching, not because you seek reward, but because kindness itself is a form of wisdom, because awareness itself is a form of freedom, because compassion itself is a form of awakening. The Buddha once compared life to a dewdrop resting on a blade of grass at dawn. Beautiful, fragile, temporary. For a brief moment, it catches the light, then it disappears. This image is not meant to create sadness. It is meant to create appreciation, because what is temporary becomes precious. What is fleeting becomes worthy of attention. What cannot be held forever becomes something to cherish while it is here. Your life is like that dewdrop. So is mine. So is every life. And perhaps the most meaningful response to that reality is not fear, not anxiety, not desperate grasping, but gratitude. Gratitude for the opportunity to learn. Gratitude for the opportunity to love. Gratitude for the opportunity to grow. Gratitude for the opportunity to awaken, even a little, during the time we are given. As you leave this reflection and return to your day, carry that gratitude with you. Carry it into your conversations. Carry it into your relationships. Carry it into the ordinary moments that so often go unnoticed. Notice the sound of the wind. Notice the warmth of sunlight. Notice the presence of people you care about. Notice your breath. Notice this moment. Because life is happening here, not in a remembered past, not in an imagined future, here, now. And if there truly is a thread connecting one life to another, perhaps the strongest thread is not memory. Perhaps it is the wisdom we cultivate. Perhaps it is the compassion we develop. Perhaps it is the love we share. Those qualities transcend identities. They transcend stories. They transcend names and forms. They are what make a human life meaningful. So whether you believe you have lived before or whether you remain uncertain, may this reflection leave you with a simple understanding. The greatest mystery is not what came before you. The greatest mystery is the possibility that exists within you right now. The possibility to become more aware, more compassionate, more patient, more wise, more fully alive. That possibility is always present, waiting quietly beneath the noise, waiting beneath the fear, waiting beneath the endless distractions of everyday life. And every moment you choose awareness over unconsciousness, kindness over cruelty, understanding over judgment, you move a little closer to it. That is the journey the Buddha pointed toward. A journey not measured in miles, not measured in years, not measured in lifetimes, but measured in awakening, measured in compassion, measured in the gradual opening of the heart. And so we end where we began, with a question. Not, have you lived before, but a question that matters even more. How will you live now? Sit with that question, carry it gently, return to it often, and allow it to guide your steps. Because whatever lies behind you, and whatever lies ahead, your path is being shaped in this very moment. One thought, one choice, one act of kindness at a time. May you walk it with wisdom. May you walk it with courage. May you walk it with compassion. And may you walk it in peace. The journey continues.